My name is Jamin Brophy-Warren. I run a video game arts and culture company called Killscreen, magazine, run a website, amongst other things. And Phil, maybe you can give your...
I'm Phil Fish. I run a video game studio called Polytron, and we're working on FEZ.
All right. This works out really well because as a reporter, former reporter, much like actors, I don't have a lot of personal opinions, and so I have to have other people kind of fill in things for me. So this works out really well for me personally. So I thought to do something a little bit different for my Well Played. We thought that we would walk through sort of the beginning of FEZ.
So we're just going to play FEZ.
We're just going to play. Yeah, I'm just going to put them right down.
Actually,
we're doing a speed run. We're doing a speed run of FEZ. So spoiler alert.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Seriously, if you don't want to have anything spoiled, you will.
The first time ruined for you forever. Part of the reason I wanted to do that is I think in part, FEZ is a game. There's a lot of expectation.
FEZ is a game.
FEZ is a game. It's still a game. But I think a lot of times, the way we think about games is influenced by a lot of things that have nothing to do with the game at all, in the sense that there's expectations that we have when we hear about FEZ. I was in Luxembourg.
La-di-da.
Maybe like 4 years ago. And so Luxembourg was a city that, it was a military city, and no one was ever allowed to paint Luxembourg. And so what painters would do, they were allowed to look at sort of the Luxembourg city, the capital, and they'd have to come back from there and then paint their memories of it. And as a result, all these pictures of Luxembourg City, they're just beautiful and romantic and majestic, in part because people carry those memories away. And in some ways, I think for games that we wait a long time for, we sort of create the same types of expectations, etc. But without further ado, because I know this session is already starting late to it, let's start. The title sequence I wanted to ask you about, because it seems like title sequences that's the first thing that you're going to see. What was the thought process for you guys in terms of...
Well, we had to show all the logos.
You had to show the letters, that's very important.
We have to show ESRB and all that stuff. Well, you just try to keep it simple. Is there sound? Yeah? Okay. Let's just get to it. Let's just, start.
I mean, one of the questions I had certainly was in terms of how did you guys make the decision from an art style standpoint in terms of who wanted FEZ to be a game? Because it seems like one thing that you do is there's definitely a pastiche effect there, right? Where you're doing some kind of more modern kind of textual stuff, and then there's the more traditional.
Well, it's pixel art, but it's kind of pixel art inspired. The pixel art aesthetic wasn't something that was there from the beginning. We didn't set out to make a nostalgic pixel art game. Pixel aesthetic kind of arose from the 2D, 3D basic idea of the game, where I figured if I take a square pixel and I extrapolate it into a cube, well then there's my whole game. There's my look, there's the philosophy, there's the aesthetic. And from there, the pixel art itself started taking kind of a squarish look. Like, I don't do organic shapes, I try to not alias anything, it's all right, 90-degree angles everywhere. Because it was really all about this idea of a square actually being a cube.
One of the things, you saw that sort of at the beginning, kind of that logo, the thin line logo. There was a great exhibition at MoMA a couple of years ago. It was called Online, specifically on the use of lines in drawing. And I think that's one of the things in the context of games, we're often sort of tempted to think about things in sort of shaded patterns, but I think there's a lot of power there in terms of using single lines to meaning. You'll see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, the world inside the game is very much like a classic video game pixel art thing. But everything that's kind of outside of that, I use a little bit edgier graphic design style, and so much about the game, so much of the game is about geometry, and a point becoming a line, becoming a square, becoming a cube, becoming a hypercube, that kind of extrapolation. So yeah, simple lines, just lines. That's a pattern that's recurrent in the game. We're going to see some of that now. So I didn't limit myself to only pixel art. I didn't use any kind of color palette restriction. And from time to time, you get a kind of more vectory looking thing overlay on top of the pixel art.
What were some of the maybe some of the non-game art references maybe you were using? I was thinking like Soul the Lit, for example.
Well, originally, when I started fairly early on, I knew that the game was going to be kind blue skies. He gets like, the air seems fresh in his movie. So I watch all these movies that have to do with things in the sky, all of them. And you know, obviously there's a lot of video game influences, but I think a lot of it came from my graphic design background and not necessarily just video games. The kind of vector overlay that we do sometimes is there to kind of hint at a bigger reality that, you know, the whole story of the game is this 2D guy thinks he lives in a 2D world and then he realizes that the world's actually 3D. But with like the way light behaves and comes in at an angle sometimes and the vector overlay, we're there to hint at an even higher reality above the third dimension.
It's definitely one of the things that is resonating with me in the game. There's a Philip K. Dick story about a man who sort of suspects that he turns around fast enough, he can sort of pull the world around him kind of like disappears. It's like there's nothing behind him, sort of.
Like the world isn't rendering fast enough. There's some of that. Like the world of FEZ is very much a video game world. It runs on computer logic. You know, there you go. So then you got your FEZ. FEZ allows you to rotate.
The name Gomez for the character? What's it?
There's a naming convention. Well, actually, we tend not to name things in the game, but like the characters internally, everything has to have a Z in it because Z is the third axis, it's the depth axis. But you know, there's a Z in the name.
I've been hoping it was a Hispanic word.
I've always actually it comes from Gomez Adam. If you have to know, I always thought Gomez was Adam's name, and I wanted. Oh no! What's happening? Oops.
So that's product-based placement for kill screen, by the way. So
That doesn't mean anything. What? This is slightly different.
Yeah, so what was the inspiration in terms of like pulling that or hitting the hard restart or whatever in terms of, because you could have just started the game, right? I mean,
well, we knew we wanted the game to start out strictly in 2D. Like that first village that you just saw, you can't rotate at that point. Only when you get the FEZ. Like now we have the FEZ from the beginning. We wanted people to kind of get used to just the controls, kind of calibrate themselves, how far you can jump, how it feels, only in 2D before we threw in the 3D notion, because it's, you know, it might be a bit much to wrap your head around. And we wanted to have people play that village environment twice, once in 2D and once in 3D.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you in terms of, that's one of the things that designers in the real world, whether it's industrial designers or architects, that they are often tasked with helping people reimagine physical space in a variety of ways, and that the physical world that lets you do that. I was curious what the challenges were for you guys in terms of creating that type of depth, or what is it essentially? It's flat, right? It's on the screen.